In a small village surrounded by mountains, there lived a young man named Kaido. Since childhood, Kaido had dreamed of walking the path of the wise, a trail that wound through the forest and led to an ancient pagoda at the mountain's peak. It was said that whoever reached the pagoda and remained there in silence for 7 days would find true inner peace. Every morning, Kaido awoke with the firm intention of beginning the journey. However, the song of the birds, the murmur of the river, or the cool shade of a tree often distracted him and led him away from the path. Instead of moving forward, Kaido would stop to observe, to listen, to play. One morning, as he prepared to depart, his grandfather approached him and said in a gentle voice, "Kaido, do not stray from your path. No matter what you see or hear along the way, what matters most is to keep moving forward with a steady heart." Kaido nodded, yet within him lingered a doubt. How could he avoid getting lost when everything around him seemed so appealing? Kaido began his journey with renewed determination. The path led deep into the forest, and soon he found himself surrounded by the beauty of nature. Wildflowers painted the ground with vibrant colors, the wind whispered through the leaves, and sunlight filtered gently through the branches. For a moment, the young man felt the urge to stop and take in the perfect landscape. But he remembered his grandfather's words and kept walking, step by step, without straying. Upon reaching a clearing, he came across an old man meditating beneath a great oak tree. The elder opened his eyes and, without rising, said, "Many stop here because they enjoy the shade, the cool breeze, and the stillness. But if you wish to reach the pagoda, do not stray. The path may be difficult, but only those who persevere will find peace." Kaido thanked the old man and continued on his way. The trail grew steeper and more rugged, and the temptation to turn back increased. But once again, the young man recalled his grandfather's words and the elder's advice. As he climbed, the wind grew colder and stronger, and clouds began to cover the sky. Kaido felt the weight of fatigue and uncertainty. At that moment, he saw a narrow trail veering off toward a quieter, sheltered valley filled with flowers and fruit trees. It looked like a much more comfortable place to rest. For a moment, the temptation to abandon his main path and seek refuge in that valley was overwhelming. However, the young man clearly remembered his grandfather's words. "Do not stray from your path." With a deep sigh, Kaido chose to ignore the valley. True peace is not found in temporary comfort, he thought, and continued climbing the mountain. As he moved forward, a small rock came loose and rolled down the slope. Kaido stumbled and fell, scraping his hands and knees. The pain was sharp, but he stood up without giving in. He knew that every step, even the difficult ones, was part of his journey. After the fall, Kaido walked more carefully, but with a steadier heart. The mountain seemed to challenge him with every step, but he knew that giving up would mean losing himself. As night began to fall, the young man sat on a rock to rest. From there, he could see the warm, welcoming lights of the distant village, as if calling him to return. The temptation to go back to the comfort of home grew strong within his chest. But at that moment, a bright star appeared in the dark sky, guiding his gaze toward the pagoda, still far off at the summit. It was as if the universe whispered to him, "Do not stray from your path, Kaido. The reward lies beyond your doubts." With renewed strength, Kaido rose and continued on, guided by the light of the star. At dawn, Kaido felt the cold air on his skin and the mist that wrapped around the mountain. The path grew narrower and more dangerous, but his mind was clear. As he moved forward, he recalled the times in his life when he had doubted and changed direction, searching for shortcuts or avoiding difficulties. He realized that those detours had never brought him peace, only confusion and emptiness. Then he understood that the true path was not just the physical trail to the pagoda, but the commitment to oneself, the perseverance, and the acceptance of every step, even the painful ones. With that revelation, Kaido walked with serenity, without fear or haste, only with the firm intention to reach his destination. At last, after many hours of effort, Kaido reached a final, nearly vertical stretch. His hands trembled, his body was exhausted, but his mind was calm. He looked down and saw the path he had traveled, with all its obstacles and temptations. He remembered his grandfather's words, the old man's advice, the star in the night, and his own determination. Everything he had experienced had taught him that straying only leads to getting lost. With one final push, he clung to a root and climbed up to the entrance of the pagoda. As he crossed the threshold, he felt an invisible weight dissolve from his chest. He knew his journey didn't end there, but he had taken the most important step. He had not strayed. Inside the pagoda, Kaido settled onto a simple straw cushion. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath, allowing silence to fill every corner of his mind. He wasn't seeking immediate answers or sudden miracles. He wanted to understand, without haste, the essence of his own path. Time seemed to stand still. The days passed without distinction between them, and Kaido learned to listen to the slow rhythm of his breath, the gentle beating of his heart, and the whisper of the wind through the trees. He realized that the path is not just a straight line toward a visible destination, but a constant flow of present moments, a dance between moving forward and embracing what is. In that state of deep stillness, he understood that distractions, the temptations to stray, are like branches that seem to offer shade and shelter, but only pull one away from true growth. The real challenge is to maintain one's inner direction, to be faithful to the path the soul has chosen, even when comfort calls us to turn back. Kaido smiled to himself, recognizing that the strength he had sought outside had always been within. That strength was his commitment not to give up, not to lose himself, to keep walking with steady and unwavering steps. On the seventh day, as the sunrise bathed the pagoda in golden light, Kaido rose with a deep serenity he had never known before. It wasn't the mountaintop or the sacred place that had transformed him, but the inner journey and the determination not to stray. Upon returning to the village, he found his grandfather waiting for him beneath the same tree where they had spoken at the beginning. Without a word, his grandfather handed him a small polished mirror, a simple object yet full of meaning. "Look within," he said with a warm voice. "The most important path you must never lose is the one that leads to yourself." Kaido held the mirror and saw his own reflection, but also the calm and clarity that now lived within him. In that moment, he understood that true peace is not a distant place, but the fidelity to oneself, the courage to keep moving forward despite the storms, the trust that the path we choose is the one that makes us grow. From that day on, Kaido never again allowed distractions to pull him away from his path. For he knew that the journey is not easy, but it is the only one that leads to freedom and true happiness.